Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. I'm returning to you again tonight for this final video for the night. An end of the year video for decent to good albums of 2024. So, I did not want to do this video until like Monday, but I decided, you know what? At least get this part of it out of the way. The unfortunate thing is, the decent to good movies one will have to wait a little bit till like by the 21st. Of December, so that will come out, but it's going to be a little bit till I get it out to you guys, so I'll let you know when I get it ready and all that, and if I do happen to prepare it sooner, I will let you know. But I'm going to discuss from 50 to 1 for the albums I've listened to that are on this list for decent to good albums, and let you know my thoughts on this next end of the year videos. So let's dive into the, I presume, fifth video of the end of the year videos. Fifth or sixth video. So let's dive into this video. At number 50 is Play Royale with Death or Glory. Now this record's decent. I haven't really come back to this that much as of lately. Showbiz is a solid track. It's a good track, but not one of my particular favorites. And there's some other songs on here, Just My Type, and some other ones that I'm just not sure if I'm crazy for, but Play Royale's new record is kind of like fairly decent. It's not one of my best, but it's just kind of weak. It's not the worst record. It at least made it on this list, but there are some critiques I have with the record, with how it's produced and all that. So basically, that's my number 50 pick. Number 49 is Fever 333 with Darker White. Now, this record did have some good tracks, but the problem is Desert Rap, Swing is kind of a mess. It didn't swing bad about a swing, bad about a swing. It swing downhill and dropped on the ground the whole fucking bat. Because that song was fucking bad. But other than that, it just... There were a few other tracks that I did enjoy, like No Hostages, Higher Power, Murderer. Nosebleeds was alright, but not one of my favorites. But other than that, sorry, I'm messaging a friend right now. That's my number 49 pick. Number 48 is Neon Trees with Sink Your Teeth. Now, this record's decent. It's another solid comeback from them, from what I listened to. And I put it at the top of the list because there were a few tracks that I was on the fence about. Bad Dreams was my favorite one from the record. It was probably the strongest highlight for the record. There were a few other tracks that I personally enjoyed, but a few critiques with certain ones. But other than that, it made my number 48 spot, and Neon Trees definitely had another comeback after 3.5, 4 years since the last, technically 4 years since the last record, which was in 2020. Oh, excuse my yawning. I'm just a little tired. But that's my number 48 pick. So number 47 is Usher Coming Home. I'm sorry for pausing for a few seconds. I'm just trying to send this message to while I'm talking about it. It's a little hard to do that, but basically, Usher Coming Home is a good record. It's a decent record at best, to be fairly honest. I do like the title track. It's pretty catchy. There were some other tracks that I was on the fence with, and that were solid. But other than that, I'm sorry for pausing again. So now to get back to it. I am so sorry for pausing in this video. I am trying to talk, but I'm just talking to a friend right now. That's why I was focusing on my message. So Usher Coming Home did have a few solid tracks and some good takes on the record, but his vocals actually shined through some tracks on this record, but there were a few songs that were an acquired taste and not my cup of tea in any way, so that's my number 47 pick. Number 46 is Post Malone with F1 Trillion. I know there's another version to it, Long Bed, and I will be talking about that because I did listen to those tracks. Those tracks were kind of mediocre to disappointing. They weren't my favorite tracks. But I think I Had Some Help was a catchy one. Pour Me a Drink was good. It's a pretty good track, but not one of my favorites. Don't Have the Heart or Have the Heart was a good track, or pretty good track in its own way. Dolly Parton sounded really good in that track. And some of his regular songs, like What Don't Belong to Me was my favorite. The song Wrong Ones was good, and pretty much Finer Things with Hank Williams Jr. was a catchy one, but what I was impressed with was Goes Without Saying and Guy for That. Guy for That took a while to grow on me. It took quite a while, but it did eventually click, and I was like, it's not a bad song. But other than that, Nosedive was good. Losers. Most of, I think up to track 11 is where it did pretty good. The ending was solid, but it could have been a little better. Like the last remaining tracks from 12 to 18 were solid, but not one of my favorites. That kind of made the record stumble a little. But Long Bed was just mediocre to disappointing. So, yeah, I put it at number 46 because it deserves to be at that spot. It at least tried to be a decent record, but it did have a few hit or misses and some flops on its way of being this decent to good albums of 2024 video. Number 45 is Pale Waves with Smitten. Now, this record actually was solid. I think Heather's vocals sound alright in this record. I think this record was a big step up from the last one, Unwanted. Unwanted was a bad record. Wasn't one of my favorite albums of 2022. This record was decent. This was an improvement for their music. Like Glasgow was solid. Pretty catchy track for sure. Actually, pretty good song to be honest, in my opinion. And then there were some other tracks on here that I was enjoying. I can't remember all the songs, but the I Wanna Make You My World thing, that song. You might know the song I'm talking about, Perfume, I think it was called. Yeah, Perfume. That track was alright for what it was. So that's my number 45 pick. Number 44 is Ab-Soul with Soul Burger. Pretty much this record was decent from what I gathered with this one. And I think majority-wise, Ab-Soul's rapping was solid, but there were some mumble rap moments in this that I was having a little bit of issues with getting on board with some of this record. But overall, it played its cards alright, so That's my number 44 pick. Excuse my coughing. I'm not getting over this thing anymore because I'm already over it. It's just I get the coughs from time to time. It's not as bad. Just this year with its allergies were fucked up this whole year. So number 43 is Kendrick Lamar with GNX. This record was actually decent. I wasn't sure if I was going to be on board with this record at first, but I think this record pulled it off with some of his rapping, but there were a few critiques I had with some tracks that I wasn't sure if I was enjoying. But Kendrick Lamar did win his rap battle with Drake and really owned him for sure. Like, disowned him and basically called him a fucking pedophile, which there is some proof behind that. And he wasn't fucking making it up. Because I looked into it and he did try to talk to a 17-year-old girl in an inappropriate way. It's like, Drake, he fucked up. Like, your music career's done. Just don't try to diss him back. His diss for Family Matters was crap. And honestly, he owned you so much and made you bitch out. He made you his bitch, basically, in those rap battles. He, came at you really hard this year and didn't hold back. And that's what I respect about Kendrick Lamar, is that he's not afraid to tell it like it is. Because they not like us. I'm just kidding. But, pretty much, Kendrick Lamar GNX was decent record. Not one of my favorites this year, but it made it on this list because it was worthy to be on this list. I felt it was appropriate to be on this list because I didn't find the album terrible. It was just fairly decent. A few hit or miss moments through the record, but something solid. Number 42 is Wallows with Model. Now this one's another decent record that I kind of enjoyed in a sense for certain songs, but Dylan O'Brien's vocals do have some good moments and some weak moments through certain tracks. Some of the tracks did tend to be a little bit of a snooze fest for a few melodies and chords and all that with certain tracks, but other than that, I think this record pulled it off in its own way with what it was going for, and I put it at my number 42. Number 41 is Cage the Elephant with Neon Pill. This record was decent. There were a few hit or miss moments. This is a follow-up to their Social Cues record in 2019, or from 2019. So it's been about 5 years since they've made a record, and this is their follow-up record to that one from 5 years ago. So I think this record had some solid hits, but nothing to the extent where I love this record. But I think it's fairly decent, and that's my number 41. Number 40 is From Ashes to New with Blackout Deluxe Edition. Now, I wish this could have been on my best albums. I really wanted it to be. But there is one issue with one song. The Nightmare remix version was so terrible that the mixing and electronic work did not fuse well. And it just didn't mesh well with the track. It made it quite annoying of a listen. And I was feeling for Danny's vocals in some of the track, but I just wasn't liking the production and mixing for that song. It was irritatingly terrible. So that is my number 40 pick. But there were other tracks that were pretty good and pretty strong. Like One Foot in the Grave. Barely Breathing featuring Chrissy Costanza was solid. It was a good track, but not one of my favorites. And then there were some other ones that I did enjoy, like Live Before I'm Dead and Hate Me Too Acoustic was pretty good for the closing track. But There was another one, Monster in Me or whatever. I think was one of those tracks that features Yelawolf. So basically, that's my number 40 pick. Number 39 is Rose with Rosie. Rose with Rosie. I think this record actually was decent, not terrible. I put it at this spot because I think she was worthy to be at this spot. In the upper 30s section, close to the 40s. But I think her record had some decent hits. Number One Girl being my favorite track. Opt, featuring Bruno Mars, is a alright track. It's mediocre at best. But then Toxic Till the End was a pretty good song. There were some other ones that I was on the fence with, like 3 a.m. And most of the other tracks were pretty fairly decent and solid. But other than that, the record was 12 songs and like a 36.5-minute record, so you're not in for a long listen. Came out on December 6th, so this is a recent one that I wanted to put on this list, and I'm glad I did. And yeah, that's the record for you for Rosie. Number 38 is Clint Lowery with Don't Say It EP. Now, this was a decent EP. It's just an instrumental. I wasn't too much of a fan of it, but I didn't hate it for how it sounded. So I put it on this list because I felt that this record actually tried something, but it didn't fully execute in the way I hoped it would. But the instrumentation was alright. There were some boring moments through this EP that was the biggest critique of it and the biggest letdown. But execution-wise, this EP performed decently. So that's my number 38. Number 37 is Becky G with Encuentros. This record is another Spanish record from her that I did quite dig for how it sounded. And execution-wise, she pulled it off in her own way. There were certain tracks I did enjoy for the 16 songs that are on it, but most likely her vocals sound nice even when she's singing in Spanish. And execution-wise, this record had its good moments and its slightly decent moments. Number 36 is Smash Into Pieces with Ghost Code. Now, Trigger was one of my favorite songs that came out at the beginning of this year. Pretty strong track for how it sounded. I really dug that track for sure. Heroes Are Calling was average. One of my favorites. Afterglow was catchy. Then you have some other tracks on the record. Like, I can't remember all the songs, but I remember 6 Feet Under. And then Flow was my favorite for sure. And there were some other tracks, but I'd have to go back and listen to this again. It's just been a little while since I've listened to this, like 2 months ago I listened to it. So it's been a little bit. But other than that, that's my number 36 pick. Number 35 is Trapped with the Fall Deluxe Edition. I think this record had something going for it, but I did feel a little bit bored with this record through a period of time. But I think the vocals are solid, not anything specifically amazing, but I know Rocked put this on his worst albums of 2024, and he thought it was a boring snooze fest, which that's his opinion and his right to his own opinion. Can't force what other people's opinions are. But other than that, I think Trap the Fall for this deluxe edition was a fairly solid, average record, and something that I would come back to if I was in the mood for it. But it made it in the mid-30s section, so It didn't make it at the lower list, but it made it on the list. So that's my number 35. Number 34 is Slash with Orgy of the Damned. Now, Papa Was a Rolling Stone is like mostly they're like cover tracks for this Orgy of the Damned record. But from what I gathered, I think Slash did have some good guitar work from time to time. It just depended on the songs. Papa Was a Rolling Stone with Demi Lovato was a fairly good track, but not one of my personal favorites from this record. So that's why I don't see myself coming back to this record, but it's this album that came and went through the year. So that's my number 34 pick. Number 33 is Shakira with Las Mujeres Llanoran. If I'm pronouncing it right, it's a little hard to pronounce it. Punteria, featuring Cardi B. Actually had a good melody, but Cardi B sucked in the track. And that was one of my weakest songs on the record. My least favorites. Not one of the worst tracks, but not one of the best. It's fairly decent for how it is, but Cardi B kind of sucked in it. And even the Spanish version to it didn't impress me. The song where she mentioned her ex-husband was probably my favorite. She really clapped back at him. But this record did have some emotional moments, and she did a song with her kids in this track, in this record, that I did enjoy. I meant to say record, I didn't mean to say song. But overall, for the 16 tracks, you're in for a good, almost hour listen, and it is an average listen for how it sounds. It's not bad. So that's my number 33 pick for Shakira. Number 32 is Kid Cudi with Insano Nitro Mega. This is like a extended version to the Insano record that came out January 12th. It is on my OK to Man albums of 2024 video. You can definitely go check that video out if you have not seen it yet. I think you guys might enjoy it. It's your choice if you think the record's good or bad. But I think this version of it was actually average. It was not a bad record. There were some songs I did enjoy for the 18 tracks and over the hour mark of this record in some minutes. But that's my number 32 pick. I didn't have a lot to talk about because it's a record that came out in late February, but I didn't review it till like March 11th or something. So it took me a little bit to get around to that, but I did get around to it. Number 31 is Bon Jovi with Forever. Now this is a average record for sure. I did enjoy some moments during this record, but I did have a few critiques about how the album was playing out, for the most part. I think Bon Jovi's vocals, John Bon Jovi's vocals, had its good moments when the album kept going and progressing with certain songs. When they got to like tracks 4 to 6 or so on and so forth, tracks got a little bit better. But the first few songs are kind of iffy, but not terrible. So that's my number 31 pick. Bon Jovi Forever is a not bad record. It's fairly average. And definitely check it out for yourself to see what you think of it. That's where I put it on the list. Number 30 is Kehlani with Crash. Not a bad record for how it sounds. I accidentally almost said track again. I think this record had some good moments, and then some weak moments as you continue through the record. But overall, it slightly impressed me for what it was going for. There were some tracks I wasn't sure if I was on board with, but mainly, it's not a bad record. Definitely check it out for yourself to see what you think of it. Number 29 is Voila with Glass Half Empty Part 2. Got a Ring to It is a solid track. Ballerina was one of my favorites, featuring Telly Smith from The Word Alive. Um, there were some other ones. All Sales Are Final was solid, but mostly the vocals in this from Luke and all that sound really good. And execution-wise, this record did pull it off in its own way, but there were 14 songs, and close to the end of the record, there were a few tracks that were hit or miss. They were iffy, but not terrible. But overall, Glass Half Empty Part 2, that came out November 22nd, is a average record. It's solid for sure. Number 28 is Zed with Telos. Now this is a average record too. I did have some moments where I did like it, but there was a song on here that I wasn't sure if I was liking. It was the 7th track on the record that I was feeling a little mixed about. Not terrible, but not great. Just mediocre. So, it made it at this spot, and there were some enjoyable tracks for the beginning of the record, closer to the end. But track number 7 was my biggest critique. Not terrible, just decent or mediocre. Number 26 is Seether with The Surface Seems So Far. I forgot to mention number 27. Number 27 is Tyler, the Creator, and I'll mention Seether, The Surface Seems So Far after this. So, Tyler, the Creator, Chromacopia is the album, and this was an average record. I'm sorry that I lost track of where I left off on the number spots that I'm mentioning. I just thought it was number 26, so sorry for revealing what number 26 is, but I will talk about Seether, The Surface Seems So Far in a moment. So, Chromacopia is an average rap album. I mean, Tyler did some regular vocals during this record, but he did some rap moments through majority of this record, and it panned out pretty alright for what it went for. So, it's an average record, not one of my favorites throughout the year, but something I listened to and thought was not too bad. Number 26, like I said, Seether, The Surface Seems So Far. The Surface Seems So Far was an average record, but I was sadly disappointed when it got to Semblance of Me and continued forward through that. There were some tracks I thought were alright, not great, but I wasn't expecting Seether to go a little soft with this record. Excuse my coughing. I think they went a little soft with this record, and they did have some good scream moments through some of the tracks. I've come back to this a few times. I do like it, but I don't necessarily think it's one of the best records of 2024. I think it's Judas Mind, Illusion, Beneath the Veil are my favorites. Everything else is kind of like, it's fine. The scream parts are the highlights through certain songs on the record. But execution-wise, I think this record was mixed, but average in its own way. Like, Lost All Control, Regret is probably my least favorite. Same Mistakes was kind of meh. And then you have Semblance of Me, Walls Come Down was not really my particular favorite. And then you have other ones that I'm just not sure if I'm connecting with. So this is kind of one of Seether's weakest records, but not one of their worst. It's not as weak as Isolate and Medicate, but it's not the worst. so it's probably the second weakest. Number 25 is Nothing Nowhere with Hell or High Water. I think this record was fairly average. I think was what he went for, Nothing Nowhere. I think his vocals did sound good for most of it. He tried to make a country pop punk record that I don't know if I was necessarily on board with, but I think it was average for how it sounded. So that's my number 25 pick. Number 24 is Khalid with Sincere. This record was fairly solid for how it sounded. I think Khalid did a lot better on this record than Free Spirit. Free Spirit wasn't the album for him. Free Spirit was boring. It was lifeless. It was going nowhere with that record. The songs felt stale and very much a buzzkill for sure. So I think this record was a better executedly well done, well thought out, and just musicality wise, this record pulled it off in an average way and an average listen. So, did dig some of the tracks on this record. So, number 23 is Serj Tankian with Foundations EP. This EP was actually not too bad for how it turned out. I think from what I listened to with this EP, I think Serj, Justice Will Shine On is a solid track for sure. And there were some other tracks that I was on the fence with, but Another Fucking Day was one of the good tracks, but did kind of get repetitious and annoying where he said another fucking day, screaming it another fucking day, where he screamed it so much in a louder screech pitch voice or whatever that I don't know if I felt for. But other than that, that's my number 23. Number 22 is Marianas Trench with Haven. This was actually an average record too. Wasn't sure if I was on board with it, but it's solid for what it goes for. And I think Marianas Trench and Josh's vocals sound good in this record. There were some good highlighted moments with his vocals. Ancient History was my favorite. There were some other tracks I did enjoy from this, like the second track, Lightning and Thunder is my favorite. The first song's a good opener, and close to the end, the closing track, Haven, is actually not a bad track. It closed out the record very well, but the first song is what introduces the record, opens it up, and sounds really good with his vocals, Josh's vocals. So I really do dig this record in its own way, and that's why I put it at almost the top 20 spot. Number 21 is Ice Cube with Man Down. Now this was a good record for sure. I think Ice Cube did make a good comeback with this record for what it went for. And execution wise, this record did pull it off with his rapping, and some of the feature artists did pretty good in this record. But for 19 songs, you're in for a solid listen for sure. And that's why I put it at number 21. It didn't technically make the top 20, but it almost did. And that's a good thing. So Ice Cube did pull it off with certain tracks and mentioned a reference about Will Smith smacking Chris Rock and all that, and other things that he was mentioning about social media and all that. So he's basically trying to rattle some people, but other than that, it worked for what it was going for. Number 20 is Jaden, When the Music Stops. Now, this was a good record. It took quite a bit of time to get used to this record. At first I thought it was going to be the most disappointing record I listened to of 2024. But no, it's grown on me throughout time. It took a while, but I do dig this Jaden record. Wreck Me is my favorite song, even though there's a lot of electronic work and repetition with his vocals singing wreck me, wreck me, wreck me, and repeating, doing to test me, test me, test me. That you hated me last week, last week, last week. Just so you win, just so you win. And you never wreck me. So, basically, I've listened to the song so much that it's kind of catchy, for sure. But other than that, most of the other songs are solid and good in their own way. Like, what the hell do I do now, or whatever. I think it's called What the Hell. I'm not sure. But other than that, good record. Definitely worth the listen. Definitely check it out for sure. Number 19 is Daughtry with Shock to the System Part 1 EP. Now this was another good record that I enjoyed. Artificial being my least favorite, and Shock to the System being another least favorite. But The Dam was a solid track too. Not one of my favorites, but did alright. And some other tracks were pretty good, like Pieces, and there were a few other hits and misses on this record. But execution-wise, for the 7 tracks for this EP, like Reckoning was a pretty strong track. But this record played it safe in a good way. And Chris Daughtry's vocals have gotten so much better. And it's a shame that I was in a Chris Daughtry live chat when they were revealing the release party of the Damn video, music video, and I got apparently blocked from chatting in there again, ever again. So I'm like, what the fuck? It's like I'm asking a simple questions. It seems like I'm asking too many questions and not following the rules of the chat, apparently. I wasn't aware of the rules of the chat, but I guess if I ask too many questions, it may trigger someone and they will block me. Or it's like, are you fucking kidding me? But other than that, I'm not happy about that, but I'm kind of getting over it. So number 18 is As I May with Dark Royal Revy EP. This will be the last one I'll mention, then I gotta end the first part to this video and come back at you for the second part to finish the rest of the video. Or, if you want, I could finish the rest of it, but it's gonna be a very long video. But other than that, As I May, Dark Royal Revy EP was a good 5-track EP. I'm not sure if I feel for the vocalists, and I got it all mixed up where I thought Miss May I and As I May were the same band, but I guess I was wrong, and they're not the same band. They did not change a vocalist. I think Miss May I is a lot better than As I May. As I May do have some solid hits, but the vocalist doesn't sound good vocally too much. There's some moments where scream vocals are pretty exceptional, but it's just the song Gray Days was not my personal favorite, not my cup of tea, but for what I listened to, I think it's alright of a listen. So that's my number 18. Number 17 is Static X with Project Regeneration Volume 2. Now, I wasn't too much of a fan of this release. I think it was good, but there are some critiques with this record for how it's overall sounding. Like, the vocalist from Zero. I don't know if he's sounding great in this record. I just think mixing wise, this could have been better perfected in a better way. But they tried something and it was good, but it wasn't worthy to be in the best albums of 2024 video. So that is my number 17 pick. And Schoolboy Q, Blue Lips is number 16. This is going to be the last one I'll mention. Then I'll talk about the last 15 in part 2 video. So, Blue Lips, Back in Love was solid. I think there was another one that I enjoyed. Blue Lips, the title track, I think was one of the songs. That one was pretty good too. I think this record was good. It was worthy to be in the top 20, and I was impressed with how Schoolboy Q's rapping through most of this record was sounding, and the mixing for this whole record was spot on good, and made it an interesting listen when it came out on March 1st of this year. So that was my number 16 pick, and was worthy to be on this decent to good albums of 2024. So that's going to be it for part 1 of decent to good albums of 2024. I will be returning to you for part 2. If I don't get around to it anytime soon, you'll expect one in the morning. But until then, you guys have a good night. Thanks for watching this decent to good albums of 2024 part 1 video. And I'll see you guys in part 2 as soon as I can get around to it. Have a good night.